In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough for Week 4, Game 3, as the Toronto Argonauts take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at home this coming Monday. My name is Ben Grant, joined as always by JB. We're going to break down the week for you. We've got a lot to talk about because the whole country is talking about Nathan Rourke, and because of that, the Toronto Argonauts have been taking some negative media attention due to the beatdown they suffered on Saturday. A lot of articles written about the Argonauts that have seemingly sprung out of that negative attention. There's some injuries to update you on. Plus, we'll get into OCDC as the Argonauts prepare for Winnipeg. We've got one thing, our prediction for the game, some fantasy advice as JB, we were winners once again this week, and then we'll make our picks. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. All right, JB, Nathan Rourke, the Nathan Rourke experience as the Argos lived through it, is seemingly following them back to Toronto because the whole country is talking about this exciting young rookie. And unfortunately, one of the sort of collateral damage, I guess, in that is that the Argonauts are on the wrong end of highlight reels that are playing on every TV network. And everyone's talking about how pathetic the Argos looked last week, which is really just, it's kind of half the story, not even really half the story. But that's kind of an upsetting situation to find ourselves in.
Yeah, in some ways it's okay. I think the story is Rourke as opposed to, the Argos, being terrible to some extent, because I think people are really excited about this potential Canadian quarterback star. And, if he keeps this up for a couple of more games, I think he's going to get some serious interest from the South.
Yeah, well, he looked fantastic last week. And we know he looked really good in week 1. We didn't really know how to gauge it because it was Edmonton and we weren't really sure what they were showing. But, man, he looked so good carving up Toronto. And you're right, if he puts a couple more weeks together like that, obviously the money is going to be significantly better down south. There's no way anyone's going to prevent him from going on that journey.
Right,
because what an opportunity that would
be. That's the terrible thing, which I'm sure BC Lion fans maybe feel is, look, what are you going to do when camp's open and he gets an invite from the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah.
Right? Like, is he not going to go? I can't see him not going to Seattle. They don't have a starting quarterback really. So that puts a bit of a damper on it, because the elite level he's playing, that is going to get interest because he is slicing and dicing in a way that I can't imagine, even with their dismissive attitudes, I can't imagine there aren't NFL scouts who are, curious to see if he can do it for half a season.
Well, he's put down better film in the last 2 weeks than any backup quarterback in the NFL has ever put down.
Right.
And so
he's going to get camp invites. There's no chance he doesn't get a camp invite.
If it continues, if everything falls apart this week in Ottawa, and there's some, as I said, I was so impressed with Nathan Rourke. I said on our last podcast, we talked about it, that I don't think seen a 2-week performance like this in decades. However, there are some things that are starting to show up as potential areas to attack in his game. And so we'll see what Ottawa does with that this week. BC's on a short week. They're traveling across the country. If there's going to be a setback, and Brian Burnham is out for a few weeks, so if there's going to be a setback in Nathan Rourke's game, it's probably going to be this week. But we digress because we kind of are going to talk about the Argos' impact from this. But part of it's just such an exciting story, so we do have to address Nathan Rourke. But yeah, being on the wrong end of that, I think a lot of media outlets not aware of even what Toronto did last season, and maybe not even aware of some of the great players and some of the great units they've got on this team coming into this game. They just look at that game and they're like, oh, the Argonauts are terrible. And that's the byproduct of the Nathan Rourke story, is that there are all these pieces hammering the Argos. There are some that are more credible. Like you've got a piece from Howard Berger, who's an Argos fan and goes to games. He wrote something in Between the Posts that really ripped ownership, which we've seen before. But he also takes a pretty heavy shot at Coach Dinwiddie, at McLeod Bethel Thompson. I want to read you just an excerpt from this article because it caught me off guard. I was expecting the ripping of ownership because we have seen that before, and there was more of that this week. Here's what was written on Between the Posts. The article, by the way, is Argos Hanging On by a Thread, is the name of the article. The Argonauts have an owner that no longer cares, an error-prone head coach that would not work elsewhere if available, a journeyman quarterback that has never and will never win anything important, a suspect, vastly overworked defense, and a couple of Hall of Fame-bound players nearing the end of their careers. That is not something you want to put on a poster.
No, I mean, and, in a certain light, I think you can argue all of those things are true.
You can find, just like an essay, there's enough there that you can dig and you can find points and you can support that. I don't agree with a lot of that. I agree with the ownership, and you and I have exhausted that angle. We've talked about that on previous podcasts about the ownership and some of the issues they have and haven't had, and how they're being, in some cases, unfairly accused of things, but in other cases, it's pretty clear. But in terms of the head coach and the quarterback, I do not feel this way. And we look at them very closely week to week. Certainly last week, there were issues quarterbacking. There were issues coaching. I don't think you can question that. But I don't think that that's something that you can necessarily say aren't fixable. And I think with Coach Dinwiddie, I actually really like him as a head coach. I think I still need to see more from him as a play caller, especially after last week, because I said that going to last week. And I need that even more now. But as a head coach, I really don't question him at all. And McLeod Bethel Thompson, he's not the best quarterback in the league, and he's not going to be competing to be the best quarterback in the league. But he is a good quarterback, and he is a good enough quarterback to win a championship with a team that supports him. And so I disagree with those points from Between the Posts, but I get at the same time where it's coming from. It's just unfortunate that we always want the Argos to be more covered in the news, and this week articles pop up all over the place, like an article in The Athletic from Sean Fitzgerald, and what's it about? Well, it's ripping Argos ownership, and his article I think is called "How Do You Fix the Toronto Argonauts?" And it's a long history of all of the different ownership failures. It'd be nice if in a week where people are actually talking about the Argos, if one of these stories were a positive one, were about, hey, go to the game, enjoy yourself, it's the best value in the city, and instead we're getting none of that.
No, it's an easy target. I mean, in all honesty, they're probably sitting around looking for, this is the dead time of sports. So you're looking for an easy piñata topic. So I'm sure they have a template saved where they can, bring it up what to do with the Argos, and now you've got something covered. Not to say there are not issues. I think the contrast between a young, energetic, high-speed offense and the Argos was jarring, and so I think that probably inspired, some concern. Is not just the loss, but that one team looked like a young team building, and one team looked kind of like an old team lost. So that makes sense to me. From an ownership point of view, I think it's tough to bang on MLSE in that. Do I wish that they were more engaged? Yeah, but. I think you have to, it's better than being league owned. It really is not like there's a list of owners behind them. It feels hard to complain about an ownership group that, provided BMO Stadium and pays the checks. And, do I wish MLSE was obsessed with winning a Grey Cup? Yeah, of course. But that's just not going to happen. I mean, I think that, the Argos attendance is fine. If they want to get the average above 20,000, they need a star. And it's just really hard to find a star in the CFL these days. It's just not the way it used to be.
I was really encouraged by my trip to Vancouver because I see Vancouver as it's not the same as Toronto, but it's a similar city to Toronto. Certainly, it's one of the big major cities in Canada is Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal in the CFL. And it wasn't so much like the attendance for the Toronto game wasn't great. It happened to be it was a gorgeous night. It was, and they haven't had good weather in a long time. There were a lot of things going against it. But yeah, the turnout wasn't nearly as good as the first week when they had over 30,000 people in BC Place. But what the positives were, walking around the city, everywhere I walked on, especially down the main streets in the downtown core, there are banners, there are posters, there's advertising, there are people wearing BC Lions jerseys all over the place. Every restaurant I went to, I engaged in conversations with servers about the team, and they knew what they were talking about. They were able to talk intelligently about players and coaches and when the game was and who they're playing without my prompting. And you certainly wouldn't find that in Toronto. You go to a random restaurant in Toronto and start asking those questions. You're going to get a lot of, people know who the Argonauts are, and that's about it for the most part. And so I was really encouraged by that because BC has had their struggles and they really feel like they're rebounding. The excitement and the energy there, especially among younger people in the downtown area, was really promising, way more so than the attendance figure. And that's what I want for Toronto, is to have people talking about the team, people younger than you and I talking about the team and knowing things about the team. And there's some, the posters and the advertising and stuff like that, people say, and, actually I've said, does that really translate into people in the stands and so on? You know what it does do is it gives you as a fan a sense of pride in your team. I would feel, just as an Argonauts fan, taking the media part of it aside, as an Argonauts fan, seeing billboards and posters around the city makes me feel good. Now, I don't know what that translates into, but having a proud fan base is, I think, a benefit. And I think that's something that you do see in BC. You've got pride in that team, especially now. Wait to see what attendance looks like in their next home game if they beat Ottawa, because I bet you it starts building. But I want to see a proud Toronto fan base and supported by billboards and in advertising and visibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I do agree it would be nice for there to be a higher profile. I didn't think the home opener had much of a profile at all. But does that, look at BC, even with all that, they're still only pulling 13,000.
Yeah, but it's going to come though.
Maybe,
the attendance won't change overnight.
Maybe, we'll see. Maybe. But they have a star. And to me, it's just that. It's that simple. If you can't have posters without a star, who are you going to put on the poster? And I don't blame the guys. Most teams in the CFL don't have a star. I think it's a league-wide concern that, look, we have elite athletes and they are amazing. And you and I, who both love football, appreciate it. But for the average fan, they want to see somebody who's going to be electric. And it's just really hard to get electric players from the States now. There are more leagues, whether it be Arena or XFL, USFL. NFL scouting is far more open to sizes that they would never have accepted before. So, like, who got ignored by the NFL? Like, basically nobody gets ignored by the NFL anymore, where the CFL really made a living off people that were ignored. So I think that's kind of a structural problem, that the teams have to deal with. It would be nice to have, the last thing I would say is, I think that one of the things that we have mentioned in the past is there needs to be way more outreach with all of the, especially in Toronto, with all of the high school football, with all of the GTA Golden Horseshoe football summer leagues. that they need to be emailing coaches with promotions, with free tickets, all of that. There's tons of kids playing Canadian football in the GTA, and they should absolutely be finding a way to get them to games. And, you're just going to have to eat. You're going to have to eat the price and basically give them $10 tickets and, see if you can get, 20% of them, 10% of them to want to keep going. So I think that's an undiscovered market that they have not figured out. And I that's where I would start. I would start with coming up with a comprehensive strategy to involve a fairly healthy, youth football infrastructure that exists in the GTA.
They do a really good job with their youth flag leagues. Like for younger kids, I think especially there's some really good stuff there in their flag leagues. But I think what you're talking about is a much bigger scale. Like you're sort of talking about like an all high schools in the GTA blitz.
Yeah.
Like every single school, especially those with a football team.
Find the coach's emails, contact the coach, talk to the coaches. I mean, not a mail out. I mean, a really specific, we're going to reach out to coaches. We're going to try and they've done a little, but like a more developed relationship with the coaches in the GTA because, there is a lot of youth football, and I think that's something to look at anyways, but we're getting that's an off season story.
It is an off season topic. The one last thing on that is what you're talking about requires. It's got to require at least one full-time employee on that.
It costs money.
Yeah, at least that. And I'm not saying it's not worth it, though. I think that there's something there. I think there's an idea there. But you're talking about a full-time job who's, a person whose job it is to around the clock be contacting, because this is a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time on email, a lot of communication, a lot of postage, a lot of visiting schools. But again, I do think worth it. But yeah, we'll bring this up another time when there's less to talk about. We've got a game to talk about. Let's change our focus here as we start looking ahead to the game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. There continue to be some injury concerns, although I'm hoping this week it's a little less dire than it has been, but there's a pretty good chance the Argos are without two more starters this week. So we haven't received an official injury report yet. They don't have to post them. The game being on Monday this week, injury updates don't start coming out until tomorrow. But just going off what we saw in last week's game, I think we have to expect the team is going to be without Dejan Allen and Deshaun Amos. I think both of those guys probably miss. So you're talking about missing your field side halfback, and you're talking about missing your right tackle. So are these going to be solved by people coming back? Defensive back, no. I don't think there's someone coming back that is just going to fill in nicely for Deshaun Amos. Offensive line, maybe. It's possible that Isaiah Cage is going to come back this week. The three big pieces that I think come back for this week are Shane Ray, Declan Cross, Isaiah Cage. And Isaiah Cage there's an asterisk there, but man, they need him to come back. Because if Allen is down, and again, I think that's going to be the case, Cage needs to play and be at left tackle, and then they've got to move Tate to right tackle. And aside from that, you're in a pretty rough scenario, because otherwise it's, Shane Richards is starting at right tackle, which I'm okay with, but we just don't have, there are no tackle backups from guys that are ready to go. There are guys on the team I'm really excited about. Kofi Apaya, I'm really excited about. He's not ready yet. There's a bunch of guys I'm excited about that just aren't ready yet, that I don't want to see out there. So that's the big question, and that's what we're going to be following this week is, how's Isaiah Cage doing? Is he going to be ready to play this week or not? Or by some miracle, is Dejan Allen okay? So that's the sort of big question for injuries. But it's going to be nice to get Shane Ray back on the field and Declan Cross on the field. And I really think that we'll see both of them dressing on Monday.
Yeah, great to see Ray, because I think that, to jump ahead, but I think that there is some hay to be made against that Winnipeg offensive line.
It's your favorite time of the show, JB. It's time for OCDC. If you're new to the show, OCDC is a segment where JB is the defensive coordinator for both the Toronto Argonauts and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I will be the offensive coordinator for both teams, and we'll give you our strategies for this week's game and how we would attack the opposition. So let's start out as the visiting Winnipeg Blue Bombers. JB, you're up first. You are the defensive coordinator for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What do you do to defend the Argos?
Uh, that is a great question. Toronto is much better at home. I'd be looking for a bounce back game. I think that clearly Harris is going to want to be a huge part of this game plan. I would focus on stopping Harris, especially in that first quarter. So I would definitely make that a priority in terms of stopping the run. They haven't shown that the pass is worthy of focus or worthy of any special game plan. So I'm looking to stuff the run. I'm looking to get after the quarterback. I think Toronto is a team that's quite fragile in its ego, offensively. I don't think they feel very confident about what they're doing at all, and I am not going to let them get confident with quick passes or easy passes or swing passes run. I play very aggressively in that first quarter. I think you want to get in Toronto's head because they are a team that's not totally sure about themselves, and so I'm looking to be aggressive with my front five, especially against that Argos offensive line. Um, you know, it's a nightmare matchup, in all honesty. If you're looking at the guys that are moving in and out, and that Winnipeg front five, which can be just out of control when they are fired up. So I'm bringing heat. I'm loading up on run blitz, and then I'm just playing standard cover, cover 3 behind myself. But I think that's the plan, is to speed that clock up and get inside Dinwiddie's head, get inside Macbeth's head, really make them start to question themselves in that first quarter.
Offensively, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I'm going to try and do a lot of what BC did this past week, because we've had 2 straight games that the Argos have played where the defensive backs looked lost, confused, had trouble communicating. And I did a film piece that just came out today on that. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I break down basically the communication failures in the Toronto secondary. It's a secondary that I have faith in, that I believe in, and that I think will rebound. But I think until they do, you've got to keep testing them that same way. So what that means is in zone situations, you've got to try and deliver on concepts that really challenge the discipline of defenders and the communication of defenders. So routes that travel through multiple zones, especially trips and quads or 4x1 sets, where there's a lot of movement. So high lows on linebackers, high lows on the safety, floods that really put the pressure on defensive backs to make a call and to know who the responsibility is and who they're supposed to leave. And I'd keep sending outside go routes, because as simple as it sounds, outside go routes along the sideline have just crushed the Argos in the first couple of weeks. And so I'll make that part of the backside, outside go routes. And that would be my main focus. Sure, you're going to mix in runs and everything else, but that is mainly how I'm going to attack the Toronto Argonauts and force them to do something they haven't done yet this year, and defend without busting. Let's move over to the good guys, JB. You're the defensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts. How do you stop these Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
Well, the Bombers are not weird. The Bombers are a very boring team. When you watch their games, they don't really have an elite offense. They just are really fundamentally sound. They don't turn over the ball very much. They're able to get some decent yardage on first down, and then they move the chains. If you play run, they'll pass. They don't have a star running back. They don't have a star receiver. They're just really well run. So they basically demand that you don't bust, and they demand that you play perfect football. Like, in terms of a strategy, there's nobody really to focus on. I don't think that they're actually that good offensively. It's just a question of, can you play penalty-free, smart, physical football for the full game. That's what they ask of teams, and most cannot, which is why they win. So I think, from a defensive point of view, I want to bring secondary heat. We did, like against BC, we just were not getting any pressure at all. I think you have to gamble at this point. Especially if you've got some secondary injury issues. I want to bring cornerback blitzes. I want to bring halfback blitzes. So I'm looking to bring heat there. I'm not that worried about the run, honestly. I think that's not going to be the difference. Defensively, I'm getting rid of zone. I don't think we can run it. I don't know. We just don't have the guys who can run it with each other. I'm trying to stay in tight man coverage, and hopefully Caleros, makes a mistake because we're heating him up, and I think that's the best you can do. It's not an exotic defensive response, but Winnipeg doesn't run an exotic offense. I think you're looking to just play good defensive football. They're not BC, like they're not Rourke. They shouldn't chew you up if you're in position and you're playing good ball. So I would keep it simple, heat them up with the secondary blitzes, and and hope that the man coverage can get much tighter.
And I'll move to the Toronto offensive side of the ball. In rewatching, I feel like you had the same experience, but in rewatching the Winnipeg Hamilton game and going back and seeing some of the Winnipeg Ottawa stuff, Winnipeg's not a very exciting team to watch. They might be the least interesting team on film in the entire league, because it's like you said, they do their job really well, and that's it. And there's no bells and whistles. It's just they don't make mistakes. It's like Iceman in Top Gun. They, eventually you make a mistake and they capitalize on it.
Yeah, they reminded me, of a team that I also enjoy. But they reminded me of the Patriots with Matt Castle or Mac Jones, not with Brady. Due respect to Zach Collaros. Where, look, we're going to come out here and we're going to throw this ball, 15 to 20 times, and we're going to give you good, easy reads, and we're going to move the ball down the field, and the defense is going to get a turnover, and we're going to win 24-17.
And the opposition every week must be like, well, I thought that went all right.
But I'm sure lost. When they look at film, teams feel confident heading into that game, because you're like, okay, we can cover that. But, the turnovers kill you. They just, it's all on the offense. You just can't turn that ball over. And that front five is a problem when they get going. I thought Hamilton, could easily have won that game. The score, looked like they got it handed to them. But Hamilton easily could have won that game. But, Winnipeg is just such a well-coached team. From a football point of view, they're really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, not exciting to watch, but beautiful to watch. And as a coach, especially, you love teams like that just don't make mistakes and do what they're supposed to do. Everyone's in the right spot. Everyone does their jobs, make the right reads, block the right guy. And that's priority one for the Toronto offense. Don't turn the ball over, like you said. That's got to be number one. Number two, Toronto's got to run. They have to be able to run the ball successfully. And a few things from that. So first of all, as you alluded to, the Winnipeg defensive front is dangerous. And so I don't feel like this can be a game where Toronto has to drop back and throw the ball all over the place. I think if everything goes well and you do get some success running, as that defensive line tires a bit and as they start rotating a bit, now you can start with some play action and maybe start picking them apart a little bit. But you have to be successful running the ball. It's the way to beat Winnipeg, and that's, you look back to last year and the game that Toronto beat Winnipeg in Toronto. It was running the football. That was what killed Winnipeg, is that Toronto was able to run the ball and then the passes came off that. It's got to be the same game plan this week. They don't have the linemen this week, most likely, to be, I'm not even sure they had that last week, but they just don't have the personnel to be able to drop back 30, 40 times and not get crushed by this Winnipeg front. So they need to run the football, and then everything off of that, play action off of that, misdirection off of that. I want to see quick screens, 3-step drops, kind of like a little bit of like what BC ran passing wise in week 1 against Edmonton, where there was no time to get to Rourke. I want to see that with Macbeth this week. I want to see short concepts where there's just not time for these guys to get to him and they can keep him on his feet.
Oh my God. I hope that's the plan. I mean, Jeffcoat and Jefferson and they are going to cause havoc I just hope the screen game, the quick hitter game, the slants, I hope that's all in. Max protect.
But the running has to be there, because it doesn't work if you can't run. If you are stuck only throwing, it's over. So the running game needs to be there. The last thing I want to see is 4x1 sets. When Toronto really hasn't run a lot of quads this year, and watching Hamilton line up like that last week against Winnipeg will give you sort of like a 3x2 look against that. So basically shifting over, but essentially you've got 3 defenders on 4 receivers, and you've got not quite a double team to the other side, but it's certainly more that way. I love that look for Toronto if that's what they're giving you. And Toronto likes to isolate Banks when they go into that look. I think you isolate Daniels and you go into your quads on the other side has to have Banks in there, because he operates way better coming, not being on the line with a waggle and in behind other bodies. So I think there are opportunities there, especially against 3 defenders. Even if you're running like all hooks on the quad side or those quick screens that we just talked about to the quad side. And then you've got opportunities for Daniels to be a star. Show us if they are going to adjust, then they're going to bring that 4th defender over and leave Daniels one-on-one. Okay, well, this is your time. This is why you're paid. This is why you're our number 1 guy. Go and win those battles. And I do think he can do that. So that's another thing I want to see this week. And, if we see all those things, I feel quite confident that Toronto's going to win this football game. One thing, JB, my one thing for this week, I'll go first. I want to see 100 yards rushing for the team. I don't care how it's distributed. I want to see at the end of this game, the team has 100 yards rushing. If they get 100 yards rushing, they will win this football game. All the other things have to fall in place too, but if they run for 100 yards, they win the game. That's my one thing. Where are you going?
Mine is a bounce back for the secondary. Pretty achievable goal, I feel. I'd like to keep Caleros under 300. I think that that's there. If Dembski's out, I think that is there. I don't think Winnipeg has a high-powered offense. I think the secondary can bounce back and be closer to who we think they are. Against this Winnipeg team, I really do. So I'm looking for, I'm 0 for 2 this season, but now I'm looking to keep pass yardage under 300.
My prediction this week, after choosing the Argos to lose last week, correctly, I might add. I foresaw it, but I can't say that I went all the way. Well, I'm back on the double blue bandwagon this week. I think this is the team needs this win so badly for so many reasons, and I think they do it. I think the Argos win 21-20, and I think the things we talk about happen. I think the DBs play a great game. I think McLeod Bethel-Thompson plays a solid mistake-free game, and I think the Argos are able to run the football. It's tight, but they win 21-20.
I am also picking the Argos to win. I would say probably veering dangerously close to homerism. But I do believe that the Argos are very good at home. They have shown in the last 2 years that they match up well with Winnipeg and Mike O'Shea's plans. So I'm going to give it to the Argos 24-22.
It's time for our world-famous fantasy advice, and we're coming off another win, JB. We're on fire right now, defeating the Canadian Football Countdown by 0.08 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was so tight. We basically won on the last completed pass that Lucky Whitehead took in, and that was enough we were down by a point, and And on that, we went up by point eight.
I mean, let's just say it's looking dynastic.
A win is a win, I'll say. We got a huge matchup this week because we take on Podski Wee Wee. So taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats podcast. This has to be a win for us. So let's go through some of our advice. I think general strategies first, then we can kind of go through our lineup. But things I like BC receivers this week. Burnham's out, and I think everywhere else is going to, like, you can really spend on Lucky Whitehead. I think he's worth it this week. But there's some value in there as well on some of the other BC receivers. So I would spread that around a little bit. Other things I like, I think Hamilton defense, if you want to keep going, we're not going that way this week, but I think there's good value there. The going against the Elks every week until they give you a reason not to isn't a bad thing. And while I don't personally recommend this, if you can sort of mentally deal with it, I think taking Dane Evans this week, he needs to have a huge game because he's got Schultz breathing down his neck. Everyone's talking about it. And I think if there's a get-right game for you, it's probably the Elks right now. So he's got pretty good value there as well.
I can't wait for this game. This game is, it's going to be a great game.
It's fun. Like Arbuckle, the idea of Arbuckle beating the Ticats amuses me. I'd love to see the Elks come in and hand Hamilton a loss, but I do think there's room for Evans to carve them up a bit. I would avoid all Montreal players this week. I think Saskatchewan is going to pound Montreal into the ground this week, and so I'm pro almost anyone Saskatchewan, anti almost anyone Montreal this week. Although I think there's some value. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I think Toronto receivers, there's really good value. You get like Devers Daniels for like 6,000. There's value to be had, and there's reason for that. But I think this is a week that you'll see them at least put up respectable numbers. Let's go through sort of our ideal lineup quickly here, JB. So we like McLeod Bethel Thompson this week at 8,165. Why do we like McLeod Bethel Thompson, JB?
Well, he's not a quarterback for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, so he had that going for him.
That's true.
It has to. He has to have a good game. I mean, if he doesn't have a good game, I think you have to look. I think you have to look at replacing him. Honestly, I think if he was not good in the opener, he was worse in the second game. It's not like he has a 10-year history. Honestly, I know Kelly's not ready to go in, but I think it's a big game for him. I believe he will be better. I do believe in him. I think that he's going to be dialed in. I really do. I'd be shocked if he was poor again.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I think it's great value here. I don't think he's going to lead the league this week. I don't think he's going to put up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns or anything like that. But I think he's going to have solid numbers, and I think for 8,165, wonderful value, and that's usually what we're about. For running backs, we also like the sort of mid-value play, and we've been riding Brady Oliveira all year long, and he's still a good price. He's 5,300.
Our moderately priced running back god.
Yeah, he's great. Keep taking him until he gets up to like 6,500. Keep pounding Brady Oliveira because that's the best deal in fantasy, and it has been since week 1. Now we're taking a little bit of a gamble with our second running back. We're going with David Mackey, who we saw up close and personal in the BC game this past week. I think there's a good chance that Butler's out this week, but even if he's not, I don't think he's going to get the same workload. And they obviously have faith in him running the ball because he ran for 90 yards. He looked fantastic. So I think for 2,500, it's a minimum play. If you can get someone who may get some points at all for 2,500, you do it. And so I think that's money well spent. Even if he only gets us 3 or 4 points, I'm okay with that. In our league, you can't leave spots blank, so that's something that makes sense for us. For receiver, really nice value here in Devers Daniels at 6,600. I like that play because if we're feeling confident that McLeod Bethel Thompson is going to rebound, then that means either Curly Gittins Jr. or Devers Daniels, one of those two guys is going to have a good game. And I think Devers, as a number 1 receiver at that price, is too good to pass up on. The other side for receiver, we got Lucky Whitehead, who's expensive, but with Brian Burnham out, Lucky Whitehead, even when he has a bad game, has close to 100 yards. And, if you can throw in a touchdown somewhere there, he was sort of used a bit as a decoy against Toronto. And I think this week they have a lot of stuff planned just for him. So 9,900, it's expensive, but I think you get points. Then for our flex, I really like Keon Hatcher. I was talking about how I like the other BC receivers. He did some nice work. He was a pretty, not an exciting target last week, but he still had a ton of targets and catches. He's not a guy that's going to go deep for you and make a lot of highlight reel catches in the end zone, but he's a solid target. And I think for 3,926, he's going to get at least your money's worth in points this week. And then defense, we went with Saskatchewan Roughriders, which is slightly above the minimum that you'll pay. But for that extra $208, I really think they're going to dismantle Montreal this week at home after they got embarrassed last week. So I think that's money well spent. Anything else stand out to you fantasy-wise? That's pretty good. I think a pretty thorough wrap-up. But anything? Were we arguing about any of these players at any point?
Well, you seemed more comfortable with having a Hamilton tinge to our team than I was.
It's true, because I do think Hamilton looks better this week, and I think they win the game this week. And so
I think
if you can stomach it,
they have to, don't they?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And it's the same thing with going like with McLeod Bethel-Thompson. If you believe in McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he should be in your fantasy lineup this week. If you believe in DeVaris Daniels, he should be in your fantasy lineup this week. If you believe in the Tiger Cats, and I don't like to, but I think they're going to win this week, then I think there is some value there because the Evans price is so low, and Hamilton's defense at a minimum is pretty good value if you wanted to take a spin with them.
Especially with that delicious Mazzoli game on the horizon.
Yeah, that one I can't wait for. That's going to be must-watch TV. It's time for our picks, JB. And just to update the good people at home, I am now winning in our yearly head-to-head, which I think we have do we have a sub sandwich on the line for this one?
I believe so.
So I'm at 9-3 after a perfect week. You are at 8-4. Let's go through this week. So BC is at Ottawa Thursday night. Where are you going with this one?
Well, the league, unlike many leagues, is still such a home-heavy league. Just home teams are crushing it this season. BC's coming across the country. It's their first road trip. I'm going out there. I'm gonna say this is an Ottawa win. That BC is going to be feeling themselves. And I thought Ottawa held their own against Winnipeg. Ottawa's at home. I got an Ottawa upset.
Yeah, I've got that too. I'm surprised you do. I was sure you were going to have BC in that one. Yeah, I like for the same reasons you said. I think, and now we may look ridiculous after this one. I think there's a good chance I go 0-4 this week because I'm taking some risks. But yeah, I'm with you on Ottawa. I think this is a good week to pick them. I think they win at home against BC. BC's got the short week, and that's so tough when you're traveling that far.
It's got like all the red flags for an upset, and if it's not an upset, then I believe BC is going to the Grey Cup. So let me just say that.
If their quarterback isn't in the NFL by then.
Also, BC fans, your quarterback is going to play for the Seattle Seahawks. So get used to that.
Game 2, Edmonton at Hamilton. I've got Hamilton in this one, like I talked about. I think you pick against Edmonton until they give you a reason not to. They haven't yet. I know Hamilton's 0-3. This is the battle of the basement. I just can't see the Tiger Cats losing this one.
No, I think they blow the doors off Edmonton. On Canada Day, place is going to be juiced. I think they win big.
Montreal at Saskatchewan. I've already talked about this a bit. Yeah, I think Saskatchewan just hammers Montreal this week. They were embarrassed.
Same deal. So it was a bunch of bad scenarios for Saskatchewan. Montreal at home is brutal, as we know. Like they are a force at home, as actually a lot of the CFL is, oddly. And again, crowd's going to be juiced up July 2nd. Another one. I think they take him to the shed.
And then we both got Toronto in the Toronto-Winnipeg matchup on Monday night. So it's we're the same. We're on board with all 4 of our picks this week, for better or worse. So that's what we got. Yeah, I feel okay about it.
Yeah, I feel good about most of them.
I'm not sure. I think we'll get a sense. Like if that Ottawa one doesn't go the way we think, it could be that we're 0-4 after this week. But we're due for a bad week. We haven't really had one yet, so
I think the worst we are is 2-2.
Yeah, exactly.
You can bet your out there. You can bet your house on Ticats, Saskatchewan. Don't. This is for entertainment
no, you
purposes
should not
only.
Bet your house.
But if you were to say
good.
bet your neighbor's house, that's the one I would do.
Make sure you check out xsandargos.com for all our stuff. As I said, I got a film piece. I got an article coming out a little bit later this week as well. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.